Hey guys, welcome to the review. I was initially going to wait until I'd played Devil May Cry 5 to follow up on my first video, but I'm starting to realize that it's gonna take some time to play through the entire game. I'm not interested in rushing out a video from my video editing cave in time for the release date, so in the meantime, I thought I'd answer some of your questions from that first video. To start, I've had a super busy month. I started some more video projects for the channel, and somewhere in there I did get to play the DMC5 demo, but I'll talk more on that later. When I first put my video up, I did not expect it to get the kind of views that it did. We'll get into a lot of my thoughts about making the video, but overall, one of the biggest things I wanted to do was to present a viewpoint that I didn't see anyone else making online. And though it may surprise some of you, that first video isn't trolling, it's my actual opinion as a lifelong Devil May Cry fan. And I lovingly accept your comments on it, both positive and negative. Alright, mostly negative, but let's myth-bust this shit. Here are the 4 biggest things you got wrong about why Devil May Cry 5 already sucks. First step, is Bayonetta an indie game? This topic really opens up a huge point for me concerning the video game industry and my reasons for talking about it in my video. So using Bayonetta as the jumping off point, let's just start with the basics. We're talking about 2 kinds of legal entities here, public and private. Capcom is a public corporation, which means that ownership of their company is distributed to the public through shares. People invest money in Capcom, Capcom grows, and they can afford to make bigger games. But what that means is that Capcom higher-ups don't solely own the company. Technically, their investors do, which makes Capcom a little twitchy when making business decisions that could scare away their investors and their money. On the other hand, Platinum Games is privately held. They have complete individual control over what games they make, but without money coming in from public stocks, they have to rely on outside funding and strong game sales to make ends meet, whether that means taking on licensed products or making up their budget through exclusive deals with companies like Sega. If they don't, Platinum will literally go bankrupt, and almost have on several occasions. They're small. Where Capcom has a huge staff of 2,952 employees, Platinum Games has only 206. But that's the price of making the games that they want to make. With their recent announcement that they're working to abandon dealing with publishers ever again, we can see how important Platinum's independence means to them, and how integral that is to making their games. So where does a title like Bayonetta lie in the huge gap between indie and fully funded AAA? The truth is that Bayonetta, by definition, can't exactly call itself an indie game, for the only reason that Sega provided the budget. But just because Sega helped fund the project doesn't exactly make it a AAA title either. I mean, you guys saw the cutscenes on PS3. Platinum was given barely enough money to make the game in the first place. Really, what Bayonetta represents is the first in what we're beginning to see now in 2019, the emergence of the independent AAA title. As middle-class game studios continue to be decimated by the arms race of today's major companies, we're seeing a lot more hesitance to put out titles with new ideas, something further exacerbated by today's throwback culture. Everything that was once old is now new again, which is why games like Bayonetta are so important, because they prove that games can have AAA value with the uncompromising vision of an independent. That's what's at stake. We're talking about creating incentive for developers to create games with an original voice, rather than a retread of what was once new. Games like Ninja Theory's Hellblade, which, following a number of dead projects with flaky distributors, Hellblade ended up being made self-funded by company founder Tamim Antoinatis, with no studio, no restrictions, and performance capture shot in the team's own boardroom. Now I know that the DMC reboot has its fans, but with Hellblade, Tamim showed the gaming world that what some studios can do with thousands of employees, he could do with 20.
If Ninja Theory can make it work with their vision with Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, then maybe we can make it work too.
Artist-driven games like this need to be successful, because as we've seen, this kind of dangerous creativity is what actually leads the pack and pushes the boundary for what exactly the medium is capable of. So while it's easy to confuse Bayonetta as a AAA Nintendo mainstay, it wasn't in the beginning. Keep in mind that a company like Capcom would have never put in a wacky, potentially offensive game like Bayonetta into production. Bayonetta was a long shot in the dark, made by a developer that took a chance on their own original idea. This is why I call Bayonetta an indie game. Bayonetta is an original idea created by Platinum, developed by Platinum. The only thing they needed from Sega was the money to get started. Platinum's even fighting for their independence right now. To say otherwise betrays a complete lack of understanding of what the company and those like it are trying to achieve. That Bayonetta's kicking it with Mario and Lady Gaga these days is incredible. It was Platinum's original game design kicking ass when they were flat broke that's allowed the property and the company to have the kind of success they've had, which is pretty much what my previous video was really about. Capcom can afford to take the chances that small studios like Platinum and even Ninja Theory put everything on the line to make. So why don't they? Next, does Nero's moveset copy DMC? No. It continues Devil May Cry 4's moveset, which many of you rightly assess that the DMC reboot dumbed down. So why do I mention in my video that Nero's moveset feels like the DMC reboot? Well, honestly, because it really does for me. After playing the demo, I'll state first that the game does look gorgeous, really. I mean, there's a reason Capcom has a staff of 2,952 employees, and they're clearly all doing their jobs. In fact, one of my only major annoyances with the demo was that the camera and quick running mechanics were getting in the way of me trying to look at everything. But having played the demo, some of the mechanics that I earmarked in the game footage haven't really changed for me. Nero's whip mechanic on the Devil Breaker totally loses the snappiness and elasticity of the Devil Bringer in 4 for me. It really feels like Dante's whip mechanic in the reboot DMC. Which, to add to that, I understand that Itsuno's team was shooting for a higher level of photorealism in the gameplay mechanics, and while I applaud the moveset for achieving that, I feel that it's also lost the zippiness and fluidity of the DMC4 engine. Everything feels a lot slower to me. I feel like I'm spending way too much time in the air, that my combos are just really chunking along compared to how quick and buttery things felt with 4. But as this is just a demo, I'll reserve my final judgment for the full game. But until then, is it fair to judge Itsuno and Matt Walker's press videos? I think anything and everything deserves criticism. Nothing should be exempt. I point out some public speaking habits from the developers in my video, and I think it's fair. How people present themselves in a public forum shouldn't be beyond scrutiny. I've certainly received plenty of criticism for the way I've conducted myself, and where it's constructive, I really appreciate it. Constructive criticism helps me understand how to better present my ideas and be a better communicator. It makes my point stronger, and in the end is gonna make my videos better. If I were them, and I was coming off a certain way, then yeah, I definitely want someone to be honest about it. I think we have a real problem with internalizing criticism as personal attacks, and it gets in the way of being able to communicate ideas. Nowhere do I state that I think they're terrible people, and unless I'm making an off-color joke, I'll always back up an observation of mine with something I've seen in a video or read in interviews. My criticism doesn't come from trying to tear down the individual, but to assess behavior and thought patterns. For example, if I see that a developer can't remember the name of a weapon or a character in his own game, then I'll probably not take them seriously as an authority on the subject.
The lightning chain staff nunchuck thing. I'm sure there's a proper term for that. I just don't know what it is.
Cerberus.
There you go.
That's the proper term.
A couple people are asking about Lucia.
Luca.
Luca, sorry.
Not Luca, not
Yeah,
Luca.
Lucia.
Lucia.
Yeah.
Thank you. The continuity is, what was it? 3, 1, 4, 2. We kind of sat back and went, you know what? Actually, let's change that. So.
Does it mean they're not talented people? Of course not. People like Itsuno have made great games in the past, and I think he will continue to make great games. How much of a corporate agenda gets in the way of his talent is still up for discussion. Obviously, I think it's completely derailed the Devil May Cry series, but it doesn't mean that Itsuno's not trying hard to make as good a game as he can, even if I think he'd rather be doing something else. But while I can recognize that, I'll still grill him if I think it feels like the final product isn't measuring up to the high standards that his work has already set in the past. Sometimes. As I said in my last video, rather than having to shape an existing franchise into something he'd rather work on, I still think Capcom should just let Itsuno loose on an original IP, but that's not really what Capcom's known for. Last one. How important is story? So this is the big divider a lot of you picked up on in the first video. My number one priority is story. Always has been, always will. If I get that fishy smell in my nose that they're gonna treat Dante like he's some big goofball kid that can't get his shit together, then yeah, I'm gonna get ticked.
What? Come on, you don't think I can handle this gig on my own?
Does that mean that I'm judging Devil May Cry 5 solely on story? No. But when some of you make the argument that Devil May Cry can have a bad story as long as the fighting engine is good, I just get confused. Don't you guys think you deserve both? ¿Por qué no los dos? In any case, for me, it's not just about the story. Most of my disillusionment comes from Capcom has some pretty shitty business practices. Aspects of the game like story, design, interviews, press conferences, and combat engines are just a natural extension and representation of that idea. Capcom has a bad track record for turning in middle-of-the-road games and pushing away their creatives. When I see a company and its developers choose to reboot an existing franchise, yeah, that's still you, Itsuno. That sends a clear signal to me. And as long as a certain style of gameplay is profitable, they'll go in that direction. The only reason why we're getting a Devil May Cry 5 is because the Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition sold so well. And where a lot of people were relieved to see the game announced, it only made me feel more concerned. I want my developers to be burning to make their game because they know that no one else is going to make it, not for them to try to compromise on a half-baked reboot and then double back when the water's chilly. If they weren't interested in making DMC5 in the first place, I honestly would have preferred that they go all in on the reboot and make it as weird and bizarre as the announcement trailer made it look like it was gonna be. So can I be sure that DMC5 is really gonna suck? I think what it really boils down to for me is a complete lack of trust in the developer that it won't. I find it offensive to be sold something conciliatory or made to feel placated as a consumer. It puts more restrictions on what the final product can or can't be and stifles creativity when they're too concerned about how many people are going to buy their next game. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I want them to make something honest. Because as a consumer, I know they can do better, and as a gamer, I know that at least I deserve better. But, I mean, I'm still gonna buy it though. If you enjoyed this discussion, or hated it, this is my brother and I's YouTube channel, and we're gonna be arbitrarily dropping some more videos on random niche topics that we like M. Night Shyamalan's The Village and Daredevil and shit. And finally, after all this time, Devil May Cry 5 comes out in a couple days. Nos vemos on the other side.